right. Good morning, everybody. It is 10:04 on Thursday, July 30th. We're calling to order the special board meeting of the Monterey Peninsula Community College Board of Trustees. We could have a roll call, please.
Chair Yuri Anderson.
Here.
Vice Chair Lauren Steck.
Here.
Trustee Rosalind Green.
Here.
Trustee Marilyn Dunn Gustafson.
Here.
Trustee Rick Johnson.
Here.
Interim Superintendent President David Martin.
Here.
All here.
Great, thank you. All right, and now we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. And Trustee Dunn Gustafson, if you could lead us this morning, if everyone but Marilyn could mute themselves and stand.
I would be happy to. I would be happy to. All right. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Marilyn. All right, so item 1C on the agenda is approval of the agenda. And if there are no comments on the agenda, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Trustee Johnson, second by Trustee Green. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. Chair Yuri Anderson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Lauren Steck.
Yes.
Trustee Rosalind Green.
Aye.
Trustee Marilyn Dunn Gustafson.
Aye.
Trustee Rick Johnson.
Yes.
It is unanimous.
Great. All right, so now we're on item 2A, which is public comment. Any member of the public wishing to address this board on an item not on today's agenda, but within the purview of the district, will have 3 minutes to do so. If you're joining via Zoom, you can go to the participants tab and select raise hand. If you're on the phone and you'd like to make a comment, press *9. All right, seeing none, we will close public comments and move on to item 3, which is approval of the consent calendar. There's one item on the consent calendar today, which is item B, minutes of the July 22nd regular board meeting. Are there any questions or comments on the consent from the board? All right, any comments on the consent agenda from the public? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve consent.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, motion by Trustee Dunn Gustafson, second by Trustee Steck. Roll call vote, please.
Chair Yuri Anderson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Lauren Steck.
Yes.
Trustee Rosalind Green.
Aye.
Trustee Marilyn Dunn Gustafson.
Aye.
Trustee Rick Johnson.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to new business item 4A, which is an information item, presentation and review of bond immediacy and planning and survey results. I'll hand it to you, Mr. Martin, to start this off.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair Anderson. And if I may, Joreen, grab the screen so I can bring up the attachments to the board item. Thank you. And good morning, trustees. And we will go ahead and jump right in. We do have a brief presentation before the upcoming action item, but we wanted to spend a couple minutes before the action item circling back and recapping the process on how we've ultimately ended up to the position that we're in today, and the conversation that the board has started and will continue to have this morning. So we developed a flow chart which really identifies what the process has been to date and identified really the key factors and decision-making points that went into ultimately a very serious consideration of placing a November bond on the upcoming ballot. So real quickly, starting up at the top, obviously everything we do here at MPC is with a students first mentality. So this entire process really started and continued to develop through the lens of making decisions that are best for our students. Those students are the students that are here today, and ultimately making the decisions that are best for our students who will be here tomorrow and in the years to come. So ultimately in the fall of 2019, we developed a 5-year educational master plan. That educational master plan identified 4 goals, 3 of which were specifically relevant to our facilities here at MPC. The first goal was to expand access to transfer and career opportunities. Goal number 2 was to ensure that resources were available to empower students to complete their goals. And goal number 3 was to provide an innovative campus environment. So as we developed and finalized the educational master plan, the next step was to develop a facilities and technology master plan, as well as a comprehensive facilities condition assessment. So this was really taking the strategic planning level down to the minute level or the granular level of looking at specific facility and technology needs that we currently have, that we currently don't have, and how can we position ourselves to be in the best place possible to not only serve the students of today, but once again serve the students of tomorrow. So the 2020-25 Facilities and Technology Master Plan, recently adopted by the board last month, or excuse me, at the July meeting, was really to identify areas on our current facility footprint that we could increase access to job training opportunities, to ensure that affordable education is available for everybody, that we have a seat for anybody who comes into our door. We can match our instructional technology with the current industry standards. We took a look at our technology to date. We looked at the technology that's currently being used in industry and identified the gaps that we need to fill to make sure that our students are utilizing the technology that is being utilized by job employers. We looked at enhancing student transfer pathways and resources, what facilities and what configurations we needed to expand and enhance pathways and resources, as well as making sure that all of our facilities are accessible to our students with disabilities, as well as our technology is accessible to our students with disabilities as well. Jumping over to the next box to the right, also we did a comprehensive facilities condition assessment, which started in the fall of 19 and ultimately concluded in the spring of 2020. And really this was an assessment done by an independent architectural firm who came onto our campus and really looked underneath the hood of each one of our facilities and gave us an approximate 20-year cost of ensuring that our facilities are continued to be safe. We maintain compliance with building code. We ensure all of our facilities are ADA accessible and maintain operational facilities. So to ensure that all of our facilities maintain a level of operational ability so we can continue to provide the educational services to our students. We'll get to the final summary document in just a minute, but the independent architects gave us a total estimated cost of $175 million just to keep our existing facilities in a state of operational capacity and ensuring that we remain building code compliant, ADA accessible, and that our facilities are safe. The $175 million 20-year cost does not include any critical modernization or expansion projects that will be needed if we are to meet our EMP goals in our 5-year educational master plan. So in looking at those 2 facility-specific documents that were derived from the foundation of the educational master plan, we took a look at our immediate facility and technology needs. So what do we need today to ensure that we can not only serve the students of today, but once again, serve the students of tomorrow. We currently are looking at a $30 million need to expand affordable career transfer job skill opportunities at our marina and surrounding communities. Our marina community is a very fast-growing community with numerous residential properties slated in the near future, so we need to be ready to serve that growing and expanding population with increased access to career opportunities, to job skills, and to educational advancement. We need $150 million to increase affordable opportunities for education, skill development, technical trade and health careers, and job placement. Those are the funds that are needed to not only focus on our Monterey campus, but also looking at the Marina campus as well as our Seaside Public Safety Training campus as well. And then lastly, we are approximate need of about $50 million to provide a comprehensive first responder training facility to our students, local fire, EMT, and police agencies. So that's delivering on our college's longstanding promise of providing a state-of-the-art training facility for the people who keep us safe in our community. And that is how we arrived to the approximate need of $230 million. That is ultimately at a rate of $18 per 100,000 of assessed value, which is part of the discussion that the board will have on action item B this morning. So once we've identified our immediate needs, we took a look at our existing funding. So dropping down to the next box, with $230 million in immediate need, we currently have about $8 million of bond funds from Measure I back in 2002 remaining. Of those $8 million, all have been allocated except for an approximate $500,000 remaining balance. So in regards to existing funds that the college has, we simply do not have the sufficiency of funds to meet many, if not all, of our very critical needs in facilities as we move forward into the next 5 years. So ultimately, based on the immediate need and then the analysis of the existing funding, we did pursue the potential of a facilities bond on the upcoming November 2020 ballot. We did perform a bond feasibility study. This study was performed in the middle of May. So during the middle of the May, as many of you will remember, Monterey County was just coming out of a shelter-in-place and into a time where the current situation was very impactful, and I would say not much different than the situation that we're in today. And even in light of that, surrounding the feasibility study, we did garner 63 to 67% community support for a November bond election. And that 63 and 67% support factored into that was a very real COVID situation, as well as split roll factors and questions as part of the feasibility study. So that 63, 67% is not reflective of a survey that was taken in January or in the beginning of March when this pandemic was still evolving. Those numbers are reflective of numbers that were 2 months ago. And I think in a very similar situation as a region that we're in today. And we do have Tim McClarney here from True North. Tim did provide a presentation to the board a couple months ago in regards to the survey results, and I would like to take a moment to invite Tim to unmute himself to provide just a brief high-level summary of the presentation that he previously provided, and maybe just a brief recap of the survey results of the feasibility study conducted to the late part of May this year. Tim, go ahead and unmute yourself, and if you don't mind just providing the board and the public a brief summary, once again, of the survey results.
Certainly, David. Can you hear me?
Yes, Tim.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. You know, as you pointed out in your portion of the presentation on the survey, we made the conscious decision, although we had planned to do this survey as early as March of last year, when COVID hit and the economy started to do a tailspin, we made the conscious decision to push that survey back, right? So that we were sort of baking into the results all the uncertainties and perhaps concerns that voters may have regarding the economy and COVID into the results, right? So that we weren't, we want to make sure we had a very realistic read on how voters might react should we still be in that kind of a situation in November. The other thing that we did in that poll was anticipate the Prop 15 split roll measure being on the ballot in November. We understand that that could turn into a loud fight about property taxes, and even those Prop 15 isn't proposing to make changes to how residential properties are impacted by property taxes. It's proposing to change how Prop 13 applies to commercial industrial properties, and we know that the opposition campaign is going to gear up to fight that measure if it's on the ballot. So we anticipated that as well. And so we built in a series of experiments in the survey to make sure that we were capturing the potential impact of a loud argument about Prop 15 in November. And so despite the circumstances, as we just described them, we found that right out of the gates with a 75-word ballot statement, we had 63% support among your likely voters for November for a potential bond measure. That is 8 points above the simple, not the simple majority, the 55% threshold that is required for a Prop 39 bond to be successful. I think also very encouraging, when we looked at the various different projects and improvements that MPC is considering funding with this bond, there wasn't a single project on that list for which less than 80% of voters said that they favored spending some of the bond proceeds on that item, meaning how you're proposing to use the funds aligns very well with your voters' priorities and what they would like to see you improve about your facilities. At the midway point in the interview, before we had presented negative arguments, but we had a chance to talk in more detail about the projects, the tax rates, and positive arguments, support jumped to 67%. So at that point, in the absence of opposition, right, we were sitting at 67%. That said, it was really important in the poll to also get a read on how voters might react to potential opposition arguments that could rise up during the election cycle, right? And so in the space of the poll, we also tested a series of what I would consider hard-hitting negative arguments, right? We think about the way an opponent would phrase an argument against this bond. We conveyed those various arguments to your voters. And the reason we do that is we want to see how resilient voter support is for a bond in case you do get opposition. And when we did that, we found that the negative arguments cooled down support a bit, but only 3 points. And so we actually land at the end of the interview, right after all these negative arguments, at 64%. So that's now 9 points above the 55% threshold. So, I do this kind of research for a lot of different public agencies and a lot of different school districts and community college districts. And I can tell you that your numbers this cycle are among the best that we see, right? When you factor everything that's going on, the fact that you're still sitting 8 and 9 points above the 55% threshold is a great place to be. There's a lot of agencies that are going to go to the ballot with results that are a lot closer to that 55 because they know that realistically that's kind of as high as they're going to get the support levels given the sort of profile of their community. And I mentioned the profile in part, one of the nice sort of properties that MPC has in terms of your electorate is it is a very left-leaning electorate overall, right? I'm working in districts that you have as, a fairly even split on their electoral profile. You'll have as many Republicans as you do Democrats, or you'll have even more Republicans than you do Democrats. And that's usually a difficult environment because, as you might think, bonds and tax measures tend to be less appealing to conservative voters. Your profile, you have 53% Democrats to 21% Republicans. So you have about 2.5 Democrats for every 1 Republican. The reason why that matters is because, to the extent that we kind of head into potentially a more difficult election cycle, your electorate is the kind that's sort of predisposed to stay with you on these measures, right? Whereas if you had a very conservative electorate, they're sort of predisposed to go the other way. And so your electoral profile is a real advantage as well. So I just wanted to kind of recap that for the board. We were certainly encouraged by the numbers that we saw. And if there are any questions about the poll or our interpretations of that and what it means in terms of November, I'm here to answer questions from the board if you have any.
Thank you very much, Tim, and we do hope that you have a chance to stick around in case there are any questions. And we'll bring the presentation to a close here very briefly. And looking at the feasibility decision-making process chart, as Tim mentioned, the results of the feasibility study would indicate that we continue to explore the possibility of a November bond because the support per the results of the poll were there in favor for moving forward. So utilizing that information, we essentially prepared a draft resolution in which is included as part of action item B for the board's consideration. And this resolution is really to address the immediate needs and the benefits to the MPC students in the community. And in focusing on the last box down there at the bottom, those needs are really to ensure that space is available for anybody who wants to come through our doors in order to get job training, career advancement, academic excellence, and opportunity at affordable cost. It's also to ensure that we meet the labor shortages of the essential healthcare careers and skilled trades, not only today, but as tomorrow as well. Making sure that our technology meets the industry standards, that our students and our community members have access to technology that is equivalent to what our job employers are having on their facilities. Looking at expanding the Marina Center to make sure that we meet the demand there. To fill a critical void in training facilities here on the peninsula, our first responding local agencies have to travel and stay overnight at locations because the facilities to train to ensure that our communities are safe are not here on the peninsula. And then lastly, and focusing on the last bullet down there, one of the immediacies of the need is that cost escalation, especially with construction and the total cost of ownership. Those numbers are real and they compound. So every year in which we do not invest in our facilities, the cost of that investment will grow year after year. So the sooner we can address these problems, the more cost effective we can be, thereby saving taxpayer funding. So ultimately, that is really a high-level overview of the entire process that ultimately has accumulated in a action item B this morning. So real quickly, I will shift gears 1 second to the facilities needs assessment. This was a document that was requested at the previous board meeting. We did reach out to our LPA architects that performed the assessment to put together a high-level summary of the total cost of ownership over the next 20 years. So as I mentioned, LPA was brought on and they spent several weeks here at MPC really looking underneath the hood of all of our facilities. And based on the operational efficiency of our current facilities and infrastructure, as well as the dates of installation and the projected usage over the next several years, the architects put together an estimated cost of what it would take to maintain our existing facilities. As I mentioned, these costs do not include any renovations or expansions or needed improvements to increase the services and the opportunities we can provide. These costs are reflective of just staying operational and meeting building code compliance and ensuring that ADA accessibility laws are met. So these costs are truly operational, just to keep us operational. In looking at the immediate 5-year need, we have at the bottom for our main campus, $36.7 million in the next 5 years. Over a 10-year period, it's an additional $17 million. And then over a 20-year period, it's an additional $108 million. for a total cost over a 20-year period of an estimated $163 million here at the Monterey campus. To the far left, we have the individual buildings numbered, which provide a breakout as to what the cost will be for each individual facility here on the Monterey campus. That same methodology is presented below in regards to the Seaside campus and the Marina campus. So in looking at our Seaside campus over the next 5, 10, and 20-year periods, it's an approximate cost of $7.2 million. And then our total Marina campus is an approximate cost of $5.3 million. And then down there at the bottom, we have our grand totals. And ultimately, those grand totals were included as part of the previous presentation. But in the bottom right-hand corner, when it's all added up, we are estimated to incur the cost of keeping our facilities at an operational standard of approximately $175 million over the next 20 years. So with that said, that concludes the initial item A presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have at this point or part of the conversation for action item B. Thank you, Chair Anderson.
Thank you, David and Tim. So what I'd like to approach is if the board has any questions on the information that we've just received, we'll do questions now, and then we'll shift to action item 4B, at which point we'll have some more potentially presentation and take questions from the board and then take comments from the public. So actually, and you know what, I take that back. We will have comments from the public specifically on the information that was presented right now, not necessarily on the action. So if the folks can kind of keep that distinction in their mind, if members of the public are gonna make comment at this point. So starting with questions from the board on the information that was just presented to us by staff and the consultants. Go ahead, Lauren.
All right, I have a question. Just background, I've talked to a couple different people and who came up with the same concern, and David alluded to it a little bit, but I didn't hear exactly the answer that they were looking for, and that has to do with the $8 million that is left in our building fund. It's all for $500,000. I understand that. Their concern was that they wanted to make sure that that was all that we spent down before we got more money. The question is that they would have, and I'd like to know too, it's been allocated. Any idea, first of all, what are those projects? And second of all, do you have any idea when those projects will be completed, when the money will actually disappear from the building fund? Will that be ahead of November, et cetera? Those kinds of questions.
And thank you very much for that question. And in regards to the remaining $8 million for the Measure I bond funds, $6 million of it is currently earmarked for the Public Safety Training Center. That $6 million is going to be critical in the design and conceptual framework phase of that project. We have engaged architects to start designing that project, and we will start utilizing those $6 million of funds here in the next several months. Most likely we will not utilize all $6 million by November, but ultimately that $6 million is earmarked and dedicated towards the Public Safety Training Center project. The additional $2 million, or the net delta between the $6 million and the $8 million total, would be our baseball field turfing project. We are currently finalizing the contract with the awarded bidder to ultimately remove the grass field and install a turf baseball field. That project will continue throughout the fall semester and will ultimately require the use of all $2 million, most likely to be finalized by the summer of 2021.
Thank you.
Trustee Johnson?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. There will not be any district funds used for this campaign. Am I correct, David?
For the campaign part, that is correct. So ultimately, if the board so chooses to call an election for the November ballot, we will not be utilizing any district funds to run a campaign for the November election.
Thank you.
Trustee Gustafson or Trustee Green, any questions on the information we were? No. I actually have one question before Lauren. So looking at the estimated costs for the Marina campus and the Seaside Public Safety, I'm wondering, I want to ensure that we factored in the prevailing wage components of first generation projects on those former corridor properties in the sort of calculations that we're going into any sort of work that may be done there.
So thank you very much, and that's an excellent question. And yes, as the architects, LPA and specifically, were developing the cost for these projects, they absolutely included as part of their projections not only escalation factors, but the cost of prevailing wage and meeting all of the requirements for construction here on the peninsula.
All right, Trustee Steck?
Sure, one more question. Our facilities master plan contemplated a prioritization schedule in which the highest priority was for projects that were safety related. And we're talking a little bit about safety issues, but do we have any idea of how many millions of the 175 or the 230 would be allocated to projects that are safety related? We really have no choice but to do that.
Sure, and I think at this point in looking at the immediate needs, so the 5-year column on that facilities condition assessment would be projects that would ensure all of our facilities are building code compliant in regards to health and safety measures outlined by the Field Act as part of our regulatory guidance. As the years go on, facilities malfunction and things change. So ultimately, looking at a 20-year projected cost of health and safety, that's difficult to do depending on the timeline of when facilities may need additional funding. But in regards to the immediate 5-year future, it is that 5-year column in the facilities condition assessment that would be reflective of what our immediate health and safety building code compliance needs are.
And to that, this is not a follow-up question. I want to remind ourselves that this is a 20-year lifetime that we're thinking of for this thing and for this bond issue, it looks like. And the last time we got a bond issue was almost 20 years ago. So we've been doing this. We have districts that do bond issues every couple of years. Our district has not had a bond issue for 18 years now.
Okay. Any other questions from trustees before we open it up to the public for comment on the information? No. All right. So if you are joining the meeting via Zoom, if you could go to the participants tab and use the raise hand function if you'd like to make a comment. If you're joining via telephone, you can press *9 and that will raise your hand and let us know you'd like to speak. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'm going to scroll through the pictures and see if anybody is waving at me. All right, not seeing any, so we will go ahead and move forward in the agenda. Thank you for that presentation and information. To new business item 4B, which is an action item. And the recommended action is that the governing board adopt the resolution of the Board of Trustees of Monterey Peninsula Community College District ordering an election and establishing specifications of the election order. So, Mr. Martin, if there's any comments you'd like to make before we begin our discussion.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. I do not have any additional comments, but we'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
All right. questions from the board on the resolution before us? So this is the calling for a November election. The bond in a total amount of $230 million, $18 per 100,000 of assessed value. No questions from the board? All right, then we will open it up to the public. Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
Well, no, I was I don't have a well-articulated question. I did read the Herald this morning, and in the Herald, one of the headline articles is that MPUSD just decided last night to not go on the issue. I don't know that we would have any access to what their polling might have said, but their fear was that they didn't think it was likely to pass because of the recession that we happen to find ourselves in. I don't have a well-articulated question, nor do I expect anybody to have an answer for this, but I'm just curious, does anybody know on this board, or David, or our consultants, whether their situation was much different from ours in considering the issue?
If I may, Vice Chair Stack, I do have a little bit of background information for context on that in regards to comparing it with our current situation in front of the board this morning. Is that MPUSD was looking specifically for a housing bond, which would have been fully funding an affordable housing project for their faculty and staff, and not necessarily educational facilities. So it was specifically a housing bond. And ultimately, that is a bit different than what we are discussing here this morning in looking at a bond that is directly related to facilities that our students and our community members will touch every day. In addition to that, MPUSD has gone out and was successful for a bond, I believe, in 2016. So it would have been their second bond in 4 years. And I think that also played into the consideration as to maybe this wasn't the time for pursuit of a housing-only bond.
And I'll just chime in, since you asked about consultants. We did not do the polling for that agency, so I don't have any insights there.
Thank you.
All right, any questions on the resolution related to the bond from the board? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and open it up to public comment on this item. Again, if you're joining via Zoom, in the participants tab, you'll see the raise hand function. If you're on the phone, it's *9. The first hand I see is from Mr. Rick Hoyer. Rick, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Greetings, board. I will not be repeating anything I've said before. I have very different things to be raising. Ironically, the aspect of MPUSD being a housing bond, actually, if you read in depth what is in front of you now, you are also a housing bond, because I quote, included in the allowable projects is construct, acquire, or contribute to affordable employee and student housing units. So no, it is not exactly has been totally built so far today. But what I wanted to, and their polling was done the end of last year and was very favorable, like yours was. They viewed things had changed. The concerns I want to raise today are an experience from your last bond and also a general aspect. I'm not sure everyone realizes, but with the last bond, we're still paying for pipettes and other fragile chemistry equipment was funded and paid for out of the last bond because it indicated equipment could be covered. I've got a bit of a problem paying for that kind of stuff for 30 years. Likewise, computers, printers, and a lot of the items you have listed in the allowable projects have short shelf lives, most definitely a whole lot less than 30 years or 20 years. I don't think any of you would finance a new computer or a printer for your house with a 20 or 30-year loan. Whether to us, either they should be taken out or a provision for shorter bonds for those be put in, like a technology bond or what else. But the public is being asked to pay for a whole lot of things that we will still be paying for long after you're already probably going to have to do 2 or 3 changes to your technology. So how you deal with that, up to you. But you really need to read in depth that really, really long list, because at the end of the day, anything in there can have money spent on it, even though your intent may be well-intentioned for all the educational facilities and all the rest you indicated. The other thing is, one of the main arguments being posited last time was this is like a help coming out of COVID to almost like a stimulus. Reality is you won't be going into any new construction for any of those facilities for well over a year. It's not passed until November. You then have to go out for the bonding. Any new construction has to have the plans fully done and go through State Division of Architects. So most of what you're talking here, other than potentially fixing leaky roofs and some of your repair aspects, are not going to be making things available for folks when COVID ends. It will in the future, but you can't be calling it a help recovery aspect after COVID from that standpoint. But we've got a major issue paying for 20 to 30 years for things that will be gone in probably less than 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoover. Any other comments from the public? All right, seeing none, we will close public comment on this item and bring it back to the board for discussion. Mr. Stack.
So I'd like to follow up on Rick's question. He makes a good point about you don't want to pay for computers with 30-year bonds, but when bond issue, there would be short-term bonds and long-term bonds. Some bonds would paid off in relatively short term. Is there anything in this proclamation that would preclude our structuring the bond so that the short-term bonds would be allocated to items with short lifespans? So we would get out of the problem of paying for 30 years for something that only lasted 5.
And if I may answer that question, no, there's nothing in this resolution that would prevent that. Ultimately, we would utilize a public financing company to assist us in those decisions. But as you mentioned, Dr. Steck, there is advantages to strategically timing the issuance of the bonds themselves. So that is definitely something that we would consider as part of the process if given the chance.
If I can chime in as well, I think although there may not be anything in the resolution itself, the law is pretty clear about how you can fund short-term and long-term assets like that. And so if you have assets with short lifespans, you have to have the financing of those match the lifespans of those items. And so although there's nothing in the resolution stating that, you are correct that you're the folks who would advise you on developing the bond program and the bond council would ensure that that's appropriately structured.
Yeah, and if I can just add to this, this is Charles Heath. IRS tax code does require you to match the expected useful life of an item paid for with bonds to the maturity of those bonds. So you have no choice but to do that. And typically most public agencies issue bonds with a mix of different maturity dates so that they can have the longer term bonds pay for the big capital improvements with a long lifespan and shorter term items for equipment, technology, and furnishings that will have a shorter lifespan.
Thank you.
All right. Additional questions or comments? Trustee Dunn Gustafson.
Well, it's more of a comment than it is a question. And I would like to say that MPC has been the benefit of very good oversight on I'm losing the word, the group that oversees how the bonds are spent, of which Rick Hoyer was an important member. They consistently over the last 18 years have provided wonderful oversight for how the funds were spent and have been very supportive of the way MPC has accounted for those funds. So I think it's important to note we have an excellent track record. We have excellent people in our community who are interested in safeguarding the way these funds are spent. We thank you, Rick, for your oversight for all these years, because it is important that we spend the community's money wisely in planning for our college. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. I had an opportunity to have an exchange as well with a former member of the Citizens Oversight Committee, and just pointing out that the management that our community puts into ensuring that we use the bonds as we've stated we would, and in the best possible way, was something that he pointed out that that committee has done really well for us. And all that information is very accessible, and looking at the length of time between the last bond and this, it seems we've been very prudent in our approach to the use of those funds. And you know, I walked into last meeting feeling very confident about my sense that this was something that our college and our district needed, but walked away saying, okay, we need to keep thinking and asking, and walked around my community this week and saw a mile-long line of cars lined up to access free food because of the issue that's going on with COVID and jobs, and began questioning my community's ability to take on this additional burden that we'd be asking them to do, or to take on for us, but also put the question out to my neighbors, and had some people come back and say, are you guys crazy? This is a crazy time to do that. Others wanting to know, what have we used our past bond proceeds for? Others wanting to know, okay, well, are you really going to build out Marina? Are we really going to see the educational center that we've been promised? How can we as community members stay informed? And, you know, a good counsel from a friend to think long-term about what it is that we're planning for and who we're planning for, and seeing that there's the students today, and then there are the students in the 15 to 20 years that we're thinking about, making sure MPC is a great place to, good option for them to access. So this has been a question that has been weighing heavy on my heart for the last week, but I feel like that as this board, you know, we set a goal for ourselves to lay the foundation and the groundwork for us to be able to answer this question in a way that we could feel really confident that we've done all the work that we need to do to go to our community, to our voters, and ask them to support our college and our district. And we had no idea there was going to be a global pandemic, but we also know that we're going to move through it, and MPC needs to move through it. And I'm coming to this table today feeling like it may not be a really easy bond to sell to the voters, but it is something that I feel like we really do need to ask them to step forward and support our college on. And I think about all of the families in my Marina community who, as I said when I joined this board, need MPC to be available for them and to be strong for them and their kids moving forward. So that's where I'm standing right now, and I'd love to hear where my colleagues are standing. You know, somebody is in a different place to talk about why you're there, and to see if we can come to some resolution this morning.
Yuri, may I say a few words?
Of course you can.
I'm echoing a lot of what you said. I have to tell you, I was very concerned after our last meeting when the question was raised if we were tone deaf to what's going on. And I'm dealing daily with questions from about 400 businesses in Monterey on things. So I didn't feel I was tone deaf to COVID, that it's taken over our lives. And yet, I strongly believe that we have to have a vision that goes beyond COVID-19, that we're preparing not only our students, but our students will be entering the world that somehow recovers and heals from this time. And I want to thank Rick Hoyer for bringing up the short-term and long-term assets part of this, because that was something all week I've been thinking about, and I appreciate those answers. I am going to go back to what I believe, which is the voters will make this decision. And I think that just about every voter is looking at their checkbook right now and making decisions for themselves and for the future of their community. And I sincerely believe that this is an important vote for our future. We've already seen during COVID the importance of all those nurses that we've graduated from MPC, all those first responders that are on the front line. And I think we owe the community the right and the responsibility to either vote for this or not vote for this, but it needs to reflect what our community believes in the future of MPC and the future of our peninsula and our society. And I support this. I don't think it's going to be an easy campaign, but I think it's one that the voters are entitled to weigh in on. And that's my comments.
Thank you, Rick. Trustee Green?
Yeah, I guess I'm aligned with both of you in regards to the feelings that I walked away with from the last meeting. I too came in, really confident and, left thinking that there was more work to do. I've had a few people, reach out to me, and I've reached out to many more. I do know that, I know that it's a competitive election. MPUSD not going forth with their bond doesn't look like something that I feel like we should mirror. I actually feel like it's a boost and a little less in regards to competition. And I do know that if we decide today to go forth, that, like Rick said, it's the voters will decide, but it's also, it falls on us on how aggressively we are going to push this out there in campaign, especially knowing that all voters are voting by mail. It's going to be sooner than that voters are going to be able to vote. So we want to get in front of this fairly swiftly. And so I guess we should ask ourselves, what is our commitment to this bond if we move forth, and how will we rally to get the word out and get our constituents to really see how important this measure is to our campus. And so, I still, even, after some conversations not as favorable, do believe that this is something that we need. And so, that's my input.
Thank you, Rosalind. Marilyn, were you unmuting yourself?
Sure. You know, there are the primary two things that we as trustees do is to hire the superintendent and to oversee the finances of the district. And as my 9-year tenure on the board will come to a close in November, both of those key things will be dealt with. So I feel that I would like to leave the college with a permanent superintendent, and I would like very much to leave the college with a promise of funds from the community that will move it forward to serve the students today and tomorrow. That is the best that I can do as my legacy. So while I fully appreciate the difficulty of these times, I also think we have to continue to look forward. I feel that MPC is critical to our community, and we need to provide our citizens with the very best that we can. And so I am supportive of moving forward with this, calling for an election for.
Thank you, Marilyn. Trustee Sutton, any comments?
Sure. So the crazy thing about education funding in California is that there's never any money for maintenance. You have to maintain buildings. I have to maintain my house. Every once in a while, I had to put a new roof on my house. We do get money for building maintenance every once in a while from the state, but everyone, including acknowledges that's the drop in the bucket. He gets enough money to maintain our facilities. And if you care about the protection of those facilities, you have to have some other way of funding, as well as funding for growth, as well as funding for new technologies. We don't really have an alternative to having a bond issue. And it is the case that there are many districts that go out for bond issues all the time, and oftentimes they get lots of bond issues passed. We haven't done that, but we are at the end of the life cycle of the last bond issue. I just don't, although I'm trying to be very sensitive to the needs of our community, I think that the responsible thing to do for our college in our community is to have funding that is to maintain and improve and make better use out of our facilities. One of the things that Rick talked about last time, Rick Johnson, I met Rick Hoyer last time, and I mean Rick Johnson this time. One of the things that I think is fairly compelling, and you repeated it here today, is that we are not today approving the tax on our constituents, on people who live in our community. If we pass this, we are approving a resolution which allows voters to decide whether they want to support the tax that would then fund our institution. And I, as concerned as I am about the timing of this, I know we couldn't go out again for another years. I don't know what the interest rates will be in 2 years. I don't know what the construction costs will be in 2 years. We know those things are pretty low right now. I feel like I want to protect my constituents, but my obligation, my fiduciary responsibility is to protect the college. And so where I'm sitting now, I think it's a tough decision, and I think it's going to be a very difficult election. I think there are lots of reasons why people might not want to support the election at this point in time, but I have an idea that we need to give them the opportunity, because if absent that opportunity, we're going to be doomed to not having enough money for our college in the near future. And so much of the college depends upon these maintenance funds. I guess that's where I am. It's a tough one. It's a very tough one, but that's where I'm thinking now.
Okay. Well, not hearing significant difference in where we're at, I would entertain a motion from the board. We do have a recommended action from our staff, which is to adopt the resolution of the Board of Trustees in Martin Community College District ordering an election and establishing specifications on the election order. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
I would like to I will second Rick Johnson.
All right, motion by Trustee Johnson, seconded by Trustee Dunn Gustafson. Can we have a roll call vote, please? If there's no more discussion from the board on the motion. Giving lots of opportunity. All right, we'll take that roll call vote.
Chair Yuri Anderson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lauren Steck,
Yes.
Trustee Rosalind Green,
Aye.
Trustee Marilyn Dunn Gustafson,
Aye.
Trustee Rick Johnson.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
All right, there we go. All right, well, with that, we have reached the end of our agenda. I will let my colleagues know maybe to expect an email. I think we might need to schedule one more special meeting for a conversation related to our other big task that Trustee Dunn Gustafson mentioned, the superintendent president search. We have a conversation with you all about that. So we'll look for an email from Joreen to make that happen. But otherwise, it is 11:06 a.m. and we will adjourn this special meeting of the Board of Trustees. And thank everybody for coming today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, David, for the information and well presented. Well done.
Thank you.